spooky, isn't it? Well, now, that probably didn't seem quite fair. We led you into an eerie mood, and then I had to go and spoil it for you. The fact is, your mind was conditioned to expect something mysterious to happen. But wait. Let's put the filter back on and open the lens and take another look. You see? It's really daylight, and it isn't half as creepy as we tried to make it appear at first. But it wasn't just the visuals that created the mood. There had to be that soundtrack for the full effect. I'll show you what we mean. Let's run through that opening sequence again, and this time we'll use some different tracks, just for variety. Okay? I'll wait here for you. Not so spooky, huh? What's this all about? Well, let's get out of this garb and graveyard and back to the studio so I can explain better without this environment influencing you. I'll take the traditional slick dissolve route that you're used to, like this. For instance, are many of the thoughts and actions which we assume to be spontaneous and uniquely ours little more than mass media mind manipulation? Are things being programmed into our subconscious minds without our being aware of the process or the consequences? You see, if TV and movies are not only the most typical modes of expression, but the most powerful means of communication we have, then it is important to ask ourselves some very serious questions about what's happening to our minds. Is there really such a thing as the battle for the mind going on? And if so, could we unconsciously be losing our God-given freedoms here? As long as we've already demonstrated a little of the soundtrack conditioning, let's explore that a bit more. Here we have all sorts of musical tracks. Danger, dramatic, marches, melancholy, oriental, African, you name it, anything. And whether canned or specially composed for the production with live recordings, they're designed to enhance the visuals, to create just the mood the producer wants. Because music does touch the emotions, it can create a very definite response in the mind. For instance, I've just selected something at random here. Marches. Well, these can be broken down into subdivisions. Wedding march, funeral march, processionals, fanfares, conquering hero types, a lot of things. But let's listen. Well, I get a mental picture of something like this. Let's try another area. Now I get another mental picture. Because of our previous experience, mental pictures surface in our minds just to accompany certain types of music. A whole segment of the media industry is built on this very concept, the association of ideas. And whether we like it or not, those mental pictures are there. The suggestions, the overtones, the innuendos are so embedded in our minds that anything that breaks this right combination of music with the visuals becomes comical. Just as we suggested in the opening graveyard sequence, it became ludicrous only when the music shifted away from the subconscious mental picture. And you'd better believe it becomes funny. We're so conditioned that humor is created in spite of ourselves. Here are several film clips we can try. Annapolis Naval Cadets, Viennese Ballroom, Children's Party, Explosion, Barnum and Bailey Special. Now, that ought to be variety enough. We have musical scores that traditionally would be used with each one of the film clips. But this time we're going to purposely mismatch the music with every scene. This is going to be wild. Ready? Hey, wait, here's another one. Beauty parlors. Now that really ought to do it. Well, we could go on and on with that kind of fun. It staggers the mind just imagining the combinations possible. Music. How much it has to do with touching us. And whether in the fictionalized screenplay or the documentary, it has a very important part in the total production. A part that we are so often totally unaware of. It's been that way ever since movies came into being. In the strictest sense of the word, there never was such a thing as silent movies. Even in those early days, at the turn of the century, someone played rinky-dink piano or some other instrument to provide the mood. We laugh at it today, but that was the beginning of our modern mental conditioning. good guy got there in time. That was long ago and far away. But it did lay the groundwork for future developments. We became sophisticated, especially in expressing our own evil natures. And music, the kind of music that touched the very inner springs of man, became more and more popular. But all the sophistication of the media arts did not inhibit us from returning to those basic beats and rhythms that had been a part of primitive, savage life for centuries. Now take a good look at these faces. These folks have come a long way to hear a concert. You just know they're not listening to that kind of music. And how do you know? Because we made cuts to the wrong type of performance? Is that it? Maybe. But let's cut to this. Okay. Now does that seem satisfactory? So you're shaking your heads again. And you're absolutely right. These folk are not listening to the music on this soundtrack. What you have been hearing in the background is built around tension and release. But what these people are actually hearing is based on a steady, pile-driving beat, repetitious rhythm, and loud. It has to be loud. And the result is a hypnotic effect. There's no tension and release in what they're hearing. Just tension. All tension. Hypnotic tension. This is not a travelogue, but we are taking you to some far-off place, the witch doctor's wonderland, where drum and the big beat have always had prime-time coverage. This is where we moderns came in. All we've been talking about so far is the effects of music. But there's also the sound effects track, too. In an effort to milk the last laugh from an audience, this kind of track is frequently used. Now, wait a minute. It isn't all that funny. Say, let me demonstrate something else. Let's imagine we're at the old corral, and we see them a-coming way off in the distance. Yes, sir, it was old Zeke driving that team right down to the Bar X Ranch. You see that fine-looking team and wagon? Of course you didn't. But your imagination was working. The suggestion was there. Obviously, sound effects can be used very effectively on or off screen. They become part of the total audio impact on the brain. Now, there are all sorts of sound effects available. Just about anything the script could call for. From trains to planes taking off and landing, cowbell, donkeys braying, bathtubs filling up, wind and rainstorms, and then we have the... Will someone please take that baby out? Thank you. It's nice to have an adjoining ballroom. So far, we've only talked about the audio. But what about the visuals? By this I mean the persistence of vision known as the phi phenomenon, in which the brain retains rapidly projected images long enough to create the effect of motion. This certainly has proven attractive to humanity. There are over 150,000 movie theaters in the world, with some 20 billion people paying admissions annually. That means an estimated 60 million people attending theaters every day. And this doesn't even begin to touch the millions spending hours riveted to the tube either. While we are not depreciating the audio in any way, it is really out of the visual experience that mass media builds its powerful influences. Is it possible then to have visuals communicate ideas without the aid of any audio? We'll let you decide. Now don't worry, there's nothing wrong with your projector. We're going to drop the soundtrack completely on this one. The genius of visuals in motion pictures is their ability to create audience participation, making the audience a part of the action, making them feel a part of the scene. It's visually exciting, and so you're drawn into the action in spite of yourself. By the way, I have a dental appointment. Why don't you come along? I think you can identify with this. I hope you stayed with me all the way on that one. Getting involved in a scene is the true power of the media, and we do get drawn into it. The film industry has honed this thing to a fine point. There's an irresistible urge to go from one motion picture to the next. That's why movie-going becomes habitual. For instance, let's say you've decided you've been watching too much TV. You've come to the conclusion you're not going to be ruled by the boob tube. You're your own master. You've decided you're going to do something else. And then you see the commercial for next Saturday night at the movies. And here it is.
Out of the fantastic fury of human emotions comes a new screenplay. Wild Run the Wicked. A pulse-pounding drama that will suddenly thrust you into the heart of all the searing action.
What do you mean you left him up there alone? The baby's blind.
Starring Alan Long, Linda Janetsko, Boardman Nolan, Janet Carrero. Together for the first time in an action-packed suspense motion picture.
Sure, we're going to prosecute, but the defendant isn't who you think it's going to be.
For mystery, intrigue, and sheer thrilling excitement that will rivet you to your seat, see Wild Run the Wicked. Brought to you over NBC, where all the action is. see it next week, Saturday night at the movies at 8:30.
And you'll be there, Saturday night, same time, same channel. It's all set up. And you're already conditioned, no matter what resolutions to the contrary. Excuse me. Quick now, look around you. Is anybody else yawning too? Uh-huh. It's difficult to follow movement like this without imitating it. Psychologists call it the Carpenter effect. And this Carpenter effect becomes even stronger than anything in real life when it's seen on the screen, accentuated by sound and rhythm. From our earliest years, we were involved in following the action around us. We came into this world as natural imitators. It is estimated that children between ages 4 and 11 spend an average of 31.5 hours a week watching TV. By the age of 12, the average child will have seen approximately 13,000 murders on TV. Can he help it if he thinks all social ills can be solved by liquidating problem people? What prevents him from equating love with lust? How can he shake the conviction that pills are a solution to all health problems and work is for squares? And when a young man is ready for an adult role, what concepts does he have that will fit him for this maturity? Can he really forget those 4,000 hours spent in the formative years of preschool viewing? Remember, that was when he generally saw the reversal process. Adults acting childish and incompetent, while children were depicted as being clever and adult. Of course, it wasn't just the audio-visual impressions that were stored in his brain either. All the senses were constantly receiving impressions, and these were being stored too. In the memory file, it is all cataloged. And while the potential of recall is always there, what we are dealing with here are certain laws that govern the mind. Now, I know the word law may not be popular. In fact, it has definitely bad vibrations for some. You may not like the word, but come over here. I want to show you something. All of God's universe is made up of laws. I want to demonstrate just one of them. I'll set off a smoke bomb so you can follow me on this one. Looks like we've got company out here. Lots of fun. Everybody having fun, fun, fun. enjoy the company. You can slow down to 125 miles per hour in the frog position and just relax. Of course, you can really get going out here in the delta position. 180 turns. You know what I mean? Big sport. Enjoy every moment. Just remember, there comes that moment when the chute has to be popped. That's what the law of gravity is all about. Obey the rule and live. Have all the fun you want, but just stay within the law. That is, if you want to do a repeat performance. Don't worry about Teddy Bear. It's the rest of the crowd that needs to keep heads up. There's a law of the mind that never alters either. Simply stated, it is, by beholding we become changed. We can take those passive thoughts, those seemingly insignificant things that are perhaps uninteresting at first, and turn them into an active thought. Repeated enough times, there is an irresistible urge to imitate, to translate it into action.
Charles, wait. Your octaves are not clean in your right hand. I think you're reaching too far and you're getting an extra note there. Try it again very slowly. Now, that's the way. If you go over and over that many times, you can get that faster and have them right. Try your left hand now with the accented notes.
Meaningless dots with tails. Very passive idea, really.
Now put them together.
Of course, this is nothing really new or remarkable to us, because all learning is based on this same principle. We've known about conditioned response for a long time. Remember the famous Russian scientist Pavlov and his experiment with dogs? Food, a bell, food. Day after day, until finally, at only the sound of a bell, the dog's brain triggered a command to his salivary glands, and they began to function. Advertisers have exploited this basic law of the mind until enough daily repetition can cause you to parrot back their own slogans and hum their jingles, from cars, tires, to soft drinks, aspirin, and razor blades. The steady bombardment has paid off, especially with preschoolers. It has been estimated that 70% of the children ask for the stuff they see on TV, and 89% of their parents buy it for them. And if the young can't understand the beautiful God-given use of sex, remember, they grew up with the idea that sex was nothing more than a marketing tool. In those early, formative years, they saw sex as just another method to tease a would-be buyer of cat food and shaving lather. Why should they value sex when it has been programmed to their brains as nothing more than a means to grease the gross national product? But other things, besides the advertising industry, get in on the mind manipulation. One prominent filmmaker said, "We are making the man of tomorrow." Okay, bedtime, sweetheart.
Good night, Daddy.
Good night, sweetie. There's another development, too. A serious side effect which ought to be considered. Those programs not built around violence, vice, and sex turn to social problems. Given enough time viewing this thing, and I could be exposed to every major problem in the world. But I haven't done a thing about it. I haven't had one real human contact. When I see starving people, I can't go over and comfort my set. All my emotions are short-circuited in my brain. Day by day, there's a conditioning of non-response. I lose contact with reality. A basic essential to brainwashing is to destroy or distort a man's sense of reality. So when time after time my emotions are aroused and yet I have not responded, nothing takes place, my mind begins to tell me it isn't real. It isn't real. And at that moment, something dies within. And someone brainwashing is so subtle, so devilish. There's a master mind behind all this mind manipulation. The Word of God long ago pointed out the perils in this battle for the mind. I'm reading from Phillips' translation of Ephesians 6. Put on God's complete armor so that you can successfully resist all the devil's methods of attack. For our fight is not against any physical enemy. It is against organizations and powers that are spiritual. We are up against the unseen power that controls this dark world and spiritual agents from the very headquarters of evil. The battle for the mind is really the battle for the soul. There are so many voices calling us, so many from every direction. And the contest is fought for the attention, the memory, the nerve cells, the file system of the subconscious, and ultimately for the will. How can anyone combat the incessant devices of the devil to reach our minds? Well, first of all, you have to be on guard. Know what's at stake and make a decision that you do not want to be manipulated. You see, the Word of God tells us we must guard well the avenues to the soul. You've got to become a faithful sentinel over your eyes, ears, and all your senses, or the evils without will awaken the evils within. That means you must really be selective, pulling your focus away from the corruption about you and concentrating on the really worthwhile things. That's the reason the Apostle Paul says, whatsoever things are true, just, pure, lovely, to think on these things.
Daddy, take my hand.
And this is where you need Christ. His supernatural power outside, above, and beyond yourself. The devil's purpose is to confuse the senses, to get control of the brain nerves which operate the whole system. The enemy knows the only way that heaven can communicate with man is through these brain nerves. Christ has promised us power to resist the devil and to fortify our minds with his love. It is by cooperating with Christ that we can withstand the assaults of the devil. But you must be willing to allow your mind to be filled with his word and the things he has created. And everything you see or hear or whatever, good music, books, friends, you will choose them carefully because you want to be closer to Christ, to know the fullness of joy for this life, right here and now. But even more, to be led out of this world and into the next, to be ready when he comes, if you're willing. The choice is yours.
She'll be with thy mighty